of the people.
It wouldn't be called the state. It would be called by something else.
We can, but there's already an anti-statist party. It's called the Tea Party.
I would define a state as
you know what? If the left and the right don't find a way to converge, this is the trenches of the Tea Party. This is going to blow away in the wind.
We're already twice as popular as the Tea Party, and we were never a part of it. We're about economic justice here.
Okay, I was at the Tea Party, so I know more about it than you do.
Well, sure, but a lot of us
so
were.
unless you were there, you have no way to speak to it.
But
Any kind of authority. I was at them.
How long have you been involved with economic and social justice in the community? About people having no jobs, about people starving, and about
economic justice. It's just a different interpretation of what
yeah, we don't agree on what brings it.
If I own a small business and they want 10% of it, that's taking it from me. It's not justice.
How about this? I don't know if you know, in the last couple of years, incomes have declined at the fastest rate ever. The group that's lost the most income is small business, because people that work are getting coerced and not getting paid, so they can't buy stuff from small businesses who now have suffered more than anything else. So why?
Right, what's making it
Because there's no laws to protect workers. It's easy for unions to bust unions. The U.S. has now the 60th lowest unionization in the world. It's been eviscerated. Unions have been attacked for 35 years. So guess what employers did when sales went down? They just fired everyone. You know what they did in Germany? Because unions are on the labor board, they're on the board of directors, they have representation, and whatever they agree to collectively bargain applies to the whole labor market. So guess what in the United States? Our unemployment rate went up 100%. In Germany, they have a 25-year low, and they export, and they're technologically savvy, and they have the highest unionization in the world. Thank you, brother.
How much inflation has their bank created?
There's no inflation here. Inflation's at a 50-year low.
You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
I'm an economic journalist.
Inflation is the printing of money. Prices going up are the symptom.
Okay.
It's caused by the printing of the money.
Well, let me address
so if we've printed more money here, our standard of living goes down.
Let me address you more directly then. The 99% movement, at the top, somebody aggregated the word data of the 99% from the Tumblr. At the top is jobs, and about third is debt. Right? Guess what? Deflation, low inflation at a 50-year low is really bad for debtors. That's why creditors, so I just want to let you know you're on the same side of creditors, because they're the ones who hate inflation. If you have inflation, the people here are mortgage and student debt, it gets eroded. It gets eroded.
Right.
The debt gets
That's
eroded.
why they're printing the money, to erode our national debt.
They're not there. Inflation
That's why they're doing it.
They want inflation above their target. Their target's 2%. Inflation's at 1%.
I don't know what you're reading, and I don't
I'm
know
an
where you
economist.
shop.
I'm an economic journalist. I'm published.
I don't care.
Published in 2 dozen places.
Do you go
including
shopping?
the biggest finance blogs in the country.
Do
So
you go shopping? Do you buy your own food?
food and oil. I understand. Food and oil has been excluded, and there are some problems with it. I understand.
That's right. Because that's what we all need to stay alive.
I understand that.
We don't need an iPod.
So obviously that's why the numbers
Right. That's why the numbers aren't right.
They have numbers that excluded as well, and those numbers.
Yeah,
Do you think it would be a good idea for the Treasury to print money, put it in bottles, put those bottles at the bottom of spent mines, cover that up with garbage, and then let people go dig for the money? Because there would be jobs created, right? Because people would be go searching for that money, and when they get the money at the bottom, they would be able to spend it in the economy.
Luckily, we don't have to put money in landfills because we have schools that need more teachers. They're overstaffed. We have hospitals that are overstaffed. We have bridges that are crumbling. So no, we don't have to put our money in a landfill.
No, but do you think that would be a good idea? Do you think that
No,
would help
a
the
landfill
economy?
idea, no.
I'm on my local budget committee. I would rather have the local committee and the local towns taking care of their own needs than taking money that's being borrowed from China, from the D.C. politicians, and bringing it here instead. That's ludicrous. And when I look at the median income of my town versus what the teachers are making, the teachers are being paid far above the median income of the rest of my town. That's silly. When I went through school, 30 kids to a teacher, and now it's down to 15 to 18, I'm sorry, we've got too many bad teachers, and we can't get rid of them because of the unions.
That's right. I didn't want to give my money to the teachers union because I taught for 5 years. I felt called to teach. See, I do the things that you're out here railing about. I go shopping for food so I know it's expensive. I taught in the public schools for 5 years. You want to help the teachers? Get rid of the Federal Department of Education. Okay? They don't do one thing that helps one kid in one classroom. But we send all our money up there, and then they give us all these dictates and band-aids, and it kills and it deadens the classroom. I know what I'm talking about because I work
question. You're complaining about the student debt. Well, the federal government's been giving them more and more money in Pell Grants, more and more money in student loans, but there's nothing to tell the colleges, keep your prices down, keep your costs down. The administrative bloat is nuts, and then they wonder why they've taken on so much debt. Why didn't the federal government say, oh, by the way, if you're going to get a master's in fine arts history, you probably won't get a job. But no, they said, here, take all this loan money and put yourself into debt. That's a super solution.
Well, just to let you know, the debt held by students that graduate from public schools, which are partially federally funded, actually have much lower debt. So, yes, it's a problem of private colleges that have a total discretion to raise prices. And I agree that the government, through its funding mechanism, could put more rules and stipulations on them, but that's exactly what you wouldn't want. So
the public schools are doing the exact same thing.
Do you know the difference between public school debt from a graduate of, say, UNH and, say, SNHU?
You know something? You have the choice to go to whatever school you want to and to take on as much debt as you think you can handle. The problem is nobody's telling these kids when they get out of school, guess what? Your degree is not going to help you at all. Most of these kids should never have even gone to college. They should have learned a trade and made their money. It would have been a better and far better return on investment than by going and getting a useless degree in some area of study that is useless to the general economy.
Well, I have a objection to the useless studies. There are people that are learning English and history, something that some people here are actually fundamentally lacking. Secondly,
you're rude.
There are people.
And I want this brought up in the General Assembly, what you said. I want it brought up that you think I shouldn't be here because I don't follow your.
I didn't point at you.
You said anybody who's been to a Tea Party or anybody who doesn't want bigger, more powerful government doesn't belong here.
Hey guys,
well,
I didn't say those
think
words.
we ought to have a discussion about it.
You're misquoting me pretty
All right, well, then I'll let you
egregiously.
tell what you said.
Is that true that people who are involved in the Tea
You
Party
taped it,
should
so
be here?
no.
Yeah,
What I said is that if you're fundamentally an anti-statist, there's already a party for you. It's called the Tea Party, and it's fundamentally anti-government. This party is about economic justice.
It was. That's what I'm saying here.
It's not anti-government, it's pro-limited government. Let government do its enumerated powers and do it as well as it possibly can, and not take on everything in the world and find out just like Solyndra and Sunflower.
You know what links us? This is what links us. We do disagree fundamentally in political philosophy. What brought us here, it isn't small or big. It's an unrepresentative democracy.
Government is too big, and it's going to be put back in the jar, and let the state and the local governments, which are more accountable to the people, instead of a big administrative, progressive state out of D.C.
See, that's your opinion, but what I'm saying is that the broad political philosophy here, it's so many people here. Why? Because more and more Americans are feeling that their interests are becoming further apart from government. And that's the essence of democracy, right? How well do public policies reflect the broad popular majority? Now,
we live in a republic, not a democracy.
And that's what we're here to change, and that's why we're here.
I'm not here to change that. I'm here to say that you can't have private profit and public losses. And you and I ought to not fight about what we disagree on. We ought to get a list of 10 things that you and I both agree on.
I agree on that.
Then we could be a real movement, and we could be a real threat to the establishment. They want us kept in these camps. They want you over here saying Wall Street. They want Tea Party over there saying Tea Party, because then we're marginalized and we do nothing.
I agree. I already agree with what you said about. I think that capitalism in general is a system of private profits and shifting the loss, shifting the risk, and shifting all of the social costs and environmental costs onto the public. I mean, what do we have right now? Record corporate profits. Record. They've never been higher. The share going to corporate profits never been higher. The share going to workers' wages never been lower.
And who's making? Hadn't bailed them out, they'd be gone right now. All these banks that we just railed at would be gone if the Fed had taken your money and my money and given it to them. You have to understand the root of the problem.
Let me ask you this. Your thought on this. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. Here in New Hampshire, one person can make a difference. When government gets too big, the citizen's voice is lost. So isn't it better then to make sure that government is smaller so each individual can hold it more accountable?
As I said before, what brings so many people here from a broad political philosophies, from anarchists, black flags, all the way to libertarians and small business people. It seems like a weird coalition. So what's going on? Let me offer you my interpretation. The people of this country feel that their interests are growing further and further apart from official public policy.
You're not answering my question.
Yes, I am, in a way that's, I think, getting to the heart of it, is that this country is going in a fundamentally anti-democratic way, and we can work out our differences later, but right now, there's pretty broad agreement that the government is representing the 1% rather than the 99%.
Oh, I would disagree with that. I would say government's getting too big, and it cannot represent the individual.
It's not big or small, it's democratic or not.
You know, President Obama said that same thing in the beginning. It is not whether it is too big or too small, or whether the question is whether it works well. And I'm saying it is too big to work well.
Well, let's look at this. The stimulus plan. The stimulus plan was about 1/3 of the size of China's, and they're about 1/5 of the size of our economy. Guess what? China's still booming. The U.S. is in the worst slump. The idea that we're spending our money all the time, spending, is a total myth. The fact of the matter is that tax revenue is the lowest it's been in 25 years. The government's barely taking any money. The U.S. tax rate in general is the lowest in the OECD countries. Corporate taxes are the lowest they've been in half a century. In 2010, the biggest myth was that Obama was anti-business. They were perpetrating an economic design to make super profits and telling everyone they were the victims. They were, in fact, the victims.
All right, you just mentioned China as a good representation of how to do things
just
better.
On the economy.
It's a totalitarian state for where the citizens have no voice whatsoever. Is that a great model you want to bring to the United States?
Their democratic government is completely reckless. They don't have a democracy at all. I'm not advocating that. But on economy, the average wage in China has been going up double digits for 6 years. If that happened here, we wouldn't be here.
But what about the citizens' freedom? They don't have it.
I agree. I'm not talking about that.
You want to live under that kind of a system?
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying, on economic terms, about what the government's spending, they spent like 10 times more relative to their economy than we did, and they're growing at 10%
Well, of course
a year.
they can do that. They're totalitarian. I'm not sure that anybody here wants to live under a totalitarian government like you're saying.
The polls for the last 3 years have suggested that loud and clear the people of this country want jobs. And guess what? The private sector in America hasn't created one net job in 11 years.
With $1.75 trillion worth of regulation every single year, and the uncertainty of more regulations, 80,000 pages of regulations were put out just 1 year. What business owner in their right mind is going to say, yeah, I'm going to expand?
Actually, the National Federation of Independent Businesses has a monthly poll. That monthly poll says the #1 concern of businesses, what's holding them back from hiring, what's holding them back from investing, is the lack of sales. Going forward, they don't see sales. Why don't they have sales? Because corporate America is squeezing their workers and no one has incomes to spend at these small businesses.
And business owners are not going to risk their capital when they look at their government and say, what the heck are you going to do to me next?
There's polls taken of small businesses, and regulatory concerns are #5 around their labor costs. They don't care about their labor costs because they're so low. They don't care about regulations because Obama, aside from two flagship programs on finance and health, which I agree were hugely flawed. Aside from that, there's been no new regulations.
Oh, really? What about energy and the Gulfatorium, where we are not...
It's not my opinion. It's a poll of small business people.
And I'm telling you, you can't limit it to just the poll. You've got to look at the system in its entirety.
They're just polls of small business people saying what their #1 concern is. It's not regulation. It's not labor costs. Far and away, it is sales.
For a small business, nobody's going to expand when there's no sales, but nobody is spending any money because they don't know what's going to hit them next. That's common sense.
Okay, well, if you're a small business person, make sure you get on that next poll. Maybe you can make the numbers a little bit more than the 5th priority. That's what I suggest, but I'm done. Thank you. If the government ensures that the roads are stable and drivable, we will not be upset. If the government ends wars, we will not be upset. All of these things come from the democratic mandate of the people, which say, for instance, after Obama's healthcare bill, 2/3 of American people wanted the healthcare bill to go further. You might be in the other 1/3, but 2/3 wanted Medicare for all. And if we were offered a system where the government said, we will issue you insurance, taxpayer funded, No one here would stick with Cigna. No one here would stick with WellPoint because they know they just take your premiums, and when you have a problem, they send you down the river.
I got news for you. I'd rather deal with an insurance agency which is smaller and has to compete for my dollars than try to reach some unknowable, unfaceable government bureaucrat trying to get a snafu fixed on a form because I didn't fill it in correctly. I got news for you. I'd rather deal with somebody that I can go to rather than a government agency because I will be just a number because I will be a smaller citizen.
Let me offer you this then. You said that we're going to rely on competition between private sector insurers to assure good prices. Do you know that the health insurance industry is the only industry in America that is exempt from antitrust laws? Health insurers are exempt from antitrust laws, so government competition plays no role.
I got news for you. It's one of the most regulated entities here in New Hampshire. There used to be 12 to 15 different entities that would offer health insurance, and after Gene Shaheen passed Senate Bill 711, it has now dropped to 2. It is so highly regulated, they've used government to basically force everybody out of the free marketplace. You're right, there's no free marketplace because of crony capitalism and the use of government, because it's gotten so large to determine the rules that have switched it to the big corporations. Until you get rid of big government and you get rid of all those rules that will now allow for competition, you're not going to see it better. Because once the government takes over, there's no free market at all.
You'd rather trust the healthcare industry? You'd rather trust the private industry for your healthcare?
At this point, I would rather see big government to say, let me sign a contract that lets me go for the stuff that I think is important. Let me buy insurance across state lines. Let me go with the competition for my dollars.
You think that's actually a solution?
I don't want the state telling me that I have to pay for pregnancy care when I don't need it.
The corporations that transcend state lines, that's going to help us as little individuals to buy health care.
There's lots of smaller companies that I can contract with as well.
Anyway, after the healthcare bill was passed, 2/3 of Americans said they wanted to go further. They wanted Medicare for all because Medicare actually has about a 3% administrative cost. The private insurers, because of their bloated underwriters, they're trying to screw everyone. They have administrative costs around 17%. So on the issue of health insurance, the private sector is about 5 times more efficient. That's known by the American people. That's why 2/3 want Medicare. Just want to let you know you are in the 1/3.
And the fraud rate with the private health insurance is way lower because they spend more on fraud. The fraud rate with Medicare right now is almost $75 billion a year. That's not efficient. That's not good government. That's not good, period. And now my camera has run out. Thank you.
Thank you.
GrokTV.